Again, we failed to hit record before we started talking about interest. It's your fault. I blame it on you, actually. Like you
Yeah.
always talk about these interesting things before we even get into the podcast. And now we're talking about
Well, and I
religion
just want to
and
have a
people
conversation
being
with you. I don't want
offended.
to do this podcast thing. I just want to
Well,
talk to
we can
Ryan.
have a
This is
conversation, but just let's record it. Like it's literally no different. You just got to press one
fair
button on
enough.
the dang computer. Yeah, we were
Yeah.
talking about religion and how many people get offended. You know, what's funny is the other day I made a post. This was a couple of weeks ago. I made a post. I think I told you this about what was it? Oh, Greek mythology. I'm reading a book
Mm.
on Greek mythology because it's interesting. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
And also there's truth everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I made this post about the gods being bored and how we've become akin to the gods and that we don't have any real issues to deal with. And we've created this amazing environment for ourselves and we've become complacent and bored and lazy and frankly pathetic. So the Greek in Greek mythology, the gods essentially created humankind, animals and humans to entertain themselves, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
We're
that's what
TV.
we've done. Like we prop up these people, we prop up, fakeness with certain things that we believe and certain things that we listen to because we want to be entertained, right? Breads and
Yeah.
circuses, we've all heard that.
Yeah.
So anyways, I made this post about it and this guy's like, "Aren't you Christian?" That's all he wrote. It's like, yeah, but I'm not sure that disqualifies me from reading about Greek mythology. But it's interesting. We get into these dogmas and we think that if you're Christian or you're Jewish or you're Hindu or you're Buddhist or you're Islam or whatever, that's the only thing. Anything else outside of that is wrong. It's like, like expand your mind a little bit. And by the way, just because you're thinking about another religion or exploring it or reading about something doesn't mean, to your point that you said, I think right before we hit record, that it's a threat to what you currently believe, but people believe it is, man. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and it can help you, like
That's the point of knowledge,
the
right?
Torah references Moses, like huge amounts of references to Moses. It's like, if you're Christian, you believe Moses was a prophet, like that could be beneficial, you know what I mean? To understand another culture's perspective on
Even
that
if
same man,
even if you're
it's
not
interesting.
religious, read the Bible.
It's true.
Like
It's true.
yes, in a religious context, of course, it makes more sense. The pieces fit together in a spiritual and religious context, but just go read Proverbs. Are you telling me there isn't a ton of information that you can get out of there that would help you improve your life outside of the spiritual realm of things? Come on.
Totally. Well, you tell me. So you go digging in your backyard and you find some old scribes, like papers written from people from, 1,000 years ago, and it got translated. You wouldn't read it.
Right.
You'd
Right,
read
of
it in a
course.
second. You'd be like, this is awesome.
This is awesome.
This is so, yeah, you would read it and you would take chunks of it and you would say, oh, this is valuable. And other things you'd be like, that's weird. And you'd move on. You wouldn't be so threatened by it.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
really
I think it's just a product of the environment that we live in where everybody believes that the world and universe revolves around them and everything they're sharing is the most important and their perspective is the only one and everything else is wrong. And if it offends me in the slightest little way possible, that I have a right not to feel offended. So sad, man. Sad. Kip, what am I noticing down here on the bottom of your chin, by the way? I meant to ask about that.
I need to get, what's this stuff called? The Just for Men. So it hides the white.
It's just, well, you're growing it out and it's just getting a little white down there. I didn't realize you had as much white in there, Kip. I turned 40 in less than a month. That's freaking wild. 40 years old. My son today, what did he say? We were processing orders.
And you're old as dirt.
It was worse than that. It was way worse than that. And he's like, he was talking about my beard because there's a little gray here, and he was talking about the same thing. And he's like, does that make you sad? And I'm like, does what make me sad? And he's like, well, that you have gray hair. I'm like, well, why would that make me sad? Like, I'm not sad about it. He's like, well, maybe you're starting to realize how little time you have left. And I was like, well, I mean, I think I've got, another 30 or 40 years on this spinning rock. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think I do. And he's like, well, yeah, no, I mean, like, it's just getting closer. That's all I mean. And I was like, well, you're getting closer too. We're all getting
Yeah.
closer, man.
Yeah.
Like,
Or you just got a lot closer now with that comment.
that's
Yeah.
right. That's right. So anyways, here
Uh,
we are.
to
The
be
old
old.
guys. It's just
Uh,
wisdom. That's all it is. Just a little wisdom. All right, man.
yeah.
Well, let's get into some questions today. I think we've got some left over from Instagram. By the way, guys, make sure you're connected with me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active, and I spend most of my social media time is on Instagram. I respond to probably 70 to 80% of the messages I receive. The other 20 to 30% are either assholes or spam, so I don't respond to those. But if you're not one of those two things, odds are good that I'll probably respond to you, even if it's a fist bump or something like that. And then the posts that I make over there, are designed to spark dialogue and discussion and engagement with you as well. So that's all at Ryan Mickler. Anyways, let's get to the questions today.
Yeah.
And you can submit your questions on Instagram too. So that's another reason to join us over there.
Stay tuned as well as Twitter. So that same exact handle on Mr. Mickler's Twitter account at Ryan Mickler.
I don't know. Just stay off Twitter. Just do it on Instagram. Twitter it's a tool. It's a tool.
It's a crazy world. All right. Isanti, define failure, Mr. Mickler. Define failure.
Failure is simply just not accomplishing what you set out to accomplish. It's really strange to me. We have this weird aversion to the term and idea of failure. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to discuss it. We want to call it something else because we make it bad. Right. And so we're like, well, there is no failure. There's only learning. You're either winning or learning, like things like that. No, in some instances you fail.
Yeah, you can learn, but you did fail. Yeah.
So I don't think we need to sugarcoat it. I don't think we need to wrap it up in this nice little present with a little bow on it. It just means you failed. It doesn't mean that it's indefinite. It doesn't mean that you're a loser. It means you lost. It doesn't mean you're a loser. So let's just call it for what it is. And let's just face reality that I was inadequate. If my business failed, that means you were inadequate. Either it was a bad idea, you didn't have the right suppliers, your point was wrong, your marketing sucked. Like there could be a myriad of reasons for it. But if you pretend that, I was just learning. I was just learning. It's just an excuse. It's just a justification. Just say, if that business venture failed, and I spent a lot of time thinking about why that was. And here's the 3 main reasons I believe that was the case. And so my next business venture is this. And here's how we shored up those 3 areas. If you lie to yourself, you're not going to do anything to fix it because you're actually making it okay. Oh, failure is just part of life. It's okay. It is part of life, but it's not okay. I don't want to fail.
It should sting, right?
It should sting. It should hurt.
Yeah.
If it doesn't hurt and you're trying to bubble wrap it in this little bow and package that makes you feel better about how crappy you were at that thing, what are the odds that you're actually going to improve or learn your lessons? So let's just call it what it is. The business failed. My relationship failed. My diet failed. Okay, cool. Back on the horse, figure out what you need to do and fix it. But let's not manipulate words and change the meaning of things. And I actually learned a valuable lesson from Jack Donovan, who we were talking about earlier, because he's got a new book out, and him and I are going to record a podcast. And I made a post on Instagram. This was years ago, and I said something like, "Humility is strength." And he responded back either in the comments or direct messages because we're friends. And he said, "No, humility is just humility. It's not strength. It's just humility is humility. It just means you're humble, but it doesn't equate to strength. Doesn't make you
strong. Yeah,
it could lead to you doing something that will make you stronger. And for some reason, just in that little exchange, a little light bulb went off for me is how often we massage and manipulate words to feel better about things. Humility is humility. It just means you're humble. And if you use it correctly, it can lead to the actions that will make you stronger, but it isn't strength in and of itself. Yeah. Failure isn't winning. It isn't learning. It just means you didn't do what you set out to accomplish. So address it, deal with it, deal in reality, and then fix it and get better moving forward.
Yeah. I like to think that most of those things create possibilities. Whether we take advantage of them or not, that's a whole different story. Yeah. So if I'm humble, that creates me a possibility to actually learn and grow. Failure creates a possibility for me to learn, right?
Yeah.
They create possibilities,
opportunities, potential.
Opportunities and possibilities. Yeah.
Right. That's all it is.
Nothing more.
Exactly. Yeah.
I really like that. That's nice. Well,
thank you. Yeah. I thought it was nice myself.
I had a thought that crossed my mind. I was going to follow up with the niceness, but you know what? Let's just leave it there. That was
All
great.
right.
Thank you, Ryan.
Perfect.
I appreciate you.
Your check is on the way.
All right, Bobby 2332. What drives you every day? And there's a couple related questions to this around when we get into funks and stuff, but so don't cover the funk side of this, right? Because
Okay.
I want to
Wait.
answer this other question. How do we
Want me to
get
wait?
out of funks? But what
Okay.
drives you from a general perspective?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in any given moment, right? But it could be a sense of duty, a sense of obligation. It could be for my family. It could be to uphold personal commitments and obligations that I've made. There's a lot of things that drive me, but like, what is the ultimate driving vision of for myself? I'm always hesitant to say, well, my family, my family
It's
drives
this.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's so trite and everybody says that. And is that enough? I mean, it is. I'm not saying it isn't that. I'm just trying to be more thoughtful about the question. What drives me? Really, what drives me is to be the best. That's it. I want to, when I think about spending time with my children, I really want to be the best father. And by the way, I'm not comparing that to you, Kip, or anybody else who might be listening. I want to be the best
version of yourself.
father that I can be personally. And so yesterday we went bowling and we went to the arcade and then we went and had dinner together as a family. And what drove me in that moment was to be the best father and husband that I could possibly be. So we had fun. We joked around and we laughed and we bowled and we played video games and arcade games and we had dinner together and we told jokes and we poked at each other and we just had a good time. And that's what drove me in the moment. And then I get to this podcast and I think, okay, well, what drives me now? I want to be the best podcaster. I want to provide the best information. I want to be the single greatest resource for men who want to improve themselves in some capacity. So my quest for whatever it is, if it's jujitsu or podcasting or family stuff or building and engaging my hobbies or hunting, it's to be the best. It's to unlock that potential that's just been sitting there dormant. And that motivates me, just knowing that, man, I just need to sneak out just a little bit more, like that podcast I did on Friday, just 1 degree difference, which we talked about on the AMA last week. Just 1 degree. I just need to, how can I squeeze just a little bit more out of my performance? And that's the thing that drives me, because I want to be the best. It's hard for me to imagine. And we have people like this who get into things, whether it's just playing Monopoly or starting their own business where they're like, I don't really care if I win. I can't fathom that. Why would I do anything and this is not an indictment on anybody else, by the way. It's just hard for me to understand why anybody would do anything if their goal wasn't to be the best. Somebody asked me the other day, they said, do you think because I posted a picture of the canoe and they said, do you think it'll float? And pardon my French, because I don't swear a lot, but why the fuck would I build a canoe if I didn't think it would float? Like that's the mentality I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just gonna try this business, just dabble and see if it'll work. Screw that.
Just imagine
I'm
if
gonna be the best, man.
Like, think what kind of person you'd have to be to build a canoe with the idea that it may not float. Like,
that's exactly right.
That you would think it may not float. Like,
that's exactly right.
You wouldn't be building the canoe. You would stop and go, why am I wasting my freaking time doing this? Because I don't think this thing's going to float, right?
Apparently there's people out there that think like that. Man, when I go all in. If I'm going to start a business, it's because I think it'll win. Will I have failures? Yeah. And I'm realistic about that. I don't have setbacks.
But you wouldn't waste your time. You don't
know,
like you and half-hearted.
Even my wife sometimes will get after me because we'll be playing, Monopoly or a board game. And she's like, why are you always so serious? I'm like, because I want to freaking win. Why would I play Monopoly not to win? That's the point. The point is to win the game. The point of business is to build a business that serves people and you make money. The point of going to the gym is to get stronger. The point of building a canoe is so it can float and you can go fish or float down the stream or river. And that's the point of it. So why do it anyway, I think we might be getting a little off tangent here, but what drives me is to be the best. That's it.
Okay. So Matt Surge's question, What do you personally do to get out of a funk that is slowing you down from achieving your goals? That happens to everyone once in a while, other than just staying disciplined, which again, people break sometimes. Any advice for keeping strong and staying the course? So based upon what motivates you, I
Yeah.
actually think this would be valuable, if you don't mind me adding to Matt's question, is one, what do you think generates a funk for you? And then what do you do to get out of it? Is the
Yeah.
funk because you're like, you know what, I'm not the best, and you start doubting your actions progressing you in that area? Is that what? Or
That's
I
not
don't know.
really something I did. Well, okay. So yes, sometimes I get down on myself where I think, and usually that comes from comparing myself to somebody else.
Yeah, like it's not working. I'm not
Right.
progressing
Because
good
I'm
enough. Yeah.
comparing it. Oh, well, look at what that guy's doing. And so that might create a little bit of this funk. Another reason that I actually get it more often than that reason is because it's become monotonous for me. And it's just
Mm,
become so systematic and monotonous and robotic almost that it's just like, really, I got to do this again.
mm,
So, what
I
I
see.
personally do, and by the way, this solves both problems, whether it's comparison to somebody else or monotony, is just get to work on something that's engaging to you. So, and sometimes you're just gonna have to mix it up. Just same thing with this podcast. Think about this. We were doing the interview podcast, which I still love, but at some point, 2 years into it, I was like, okay, well, what else? Like, what else is there? And so we did the Friday field notes, and now we're doing the Ask Me Anything, and we mix these other things into the equation that allow us still to be disciplined. I think this guy talked about being disciplined.
Yeah.
So we're still being disciplined, but we're doing different actions still along similar pursuits that will keep us motivated, compelled, and interested in the thing that we're doing. But sometimes
Mm,
with a rut, you just gotta pop yourself out of it by doing something different, something unique, something engaging. And then you can come back into whatever it is that you have to get done because we have duty and obligation, responsibility. You can do it with a new mindset, a new perspective, a new level of energy because you went out and did something different. Like we're not meant to
I
be
see.
drones, and so many men are. We wake up, we shower, we maybe grab a quick bite to eat, we run into work, we're doing somebody else's job. 60 to 70% by studies have shown that amount of people are dissatisfied with the work they're doing. They have no lunch break. They have no hobbies. They have no friends. They have no pursuits or interests. They come home. Their kids are jumping on them. Their wife's asking them to do a bunch of things. They sit down. They drink a beer or two. They watch a show. They go to bed and they do it all over again.
And
Well, of
repeat. Yeah.
course, you're going to get burned out on that. In fact, I did a podcast. I think this was 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was a Friday field notes. Let's see if I can find it here. And it was
Pull it
it
up
was
too.
titled, I think it was titled how to avoid burnout.
Burnout. Yeah, you're right.
Let's see here. Oh yeah, here it is. So February 26th, it's avoid burnout in your business and relationships. But the information I share applies to any facet of your life. So you might go back and listen to that one. It's February 26th. Avoid burnout in your business and relationships.
And would you say, Ryan, those adjustments to tactics allow you to be creative again?
Well,
And that's part of the benefit that you're getting, is like creativity and trying, and you know what I mean?
yeah.
Exploration versus just, you know?
Yeah. I mean, yes, creativity is crucial. You have to be able to flex that creative muscle. And if you don't get to flex that, life becomes very stale.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that even at jujitsu the other day. Is there's some default things that I feel pretty comfortable with, and I always fall back on those defaults. And I went and trained the other night, and I gave myself permission to be creative, which means here's the trick: I got
Yes.
caught
Yeah.
a whole lot more.
Totally.
So that wounds your pride, and the optics don't look as good, right? Oh, how come Ryan's getting caught in this and that, and by this and everything else? I had to give myself permission to be a little creative. And that creativity over time is going to make me better. Over time being the key word. Right up front,
Yeah.
it doesn't, because I could always go back to the things that work, the fundamentals and the foundations and the things that work. But you got to push those edges a little bit. You got to get out on the fringes and see some things you're going to find out. Nope, that doesn't work. Rein it back in. And other things, whoa, that was a breakthrough. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that was there. But you have to go out on the fringes to find where those moments are. Otherwise, yeah, life just becomes very monotonous, and your growth just kind of stalemates a little bit, right? It's just, it just stops. It kind of flatlines and plateaus. And this is how we avoid the plateaus in our lives.
Yeah. I think that's a foundational principle too, because like to your point, you know, I'm being really creative with Kimuras. It's just, I'm even getting a nickname at the gym of Kip Moras, you know, cause I'm just, I'm obsessed, but I give my back. There's an element of exposing my back always. Right. So I'm getting choked all the time. Because I'm constantly like diving in for these things. Right. But there's no learning in that. Yeah,
and that's
exactly. Good. And I have oh, good.
I was going to say, did you watch the fights this last weekend, UFC?
I didn't. I was out of town.
It was an interesting, I mean, it was an amazing card. It was very interesting how it went, but I watched, I think Dominic Cruz was fighting. I can't remember if he was on the main card or prelims. Yeah. But he's an interesting guy, you know, like the way that they were talking about him quite a bit, how he developed his own movement and style and footwork. And he's pretty square. His stance is pretty square to his opponent, which is unique and different and very dangerous at times.
And he moves and drops his head a lot. So theoretically he could get kicked in the head really easily, but he moves so much. It's crazy.
So he's developed this very interesting, unique style that's very hard to deal with because a lot of people don't see it. But I guarantee he's gotten kicked in the head, you know, his fair share of times because he's developed this very unique and fascinating style that you know is it's hard to deal with, but you got to earn it, right? You got to actually earn your licks, and I'm sure he has, you know, to be able to create a style like that.
Yeah, totally. I have a pretty regiment workout plan that I follow, and probably about a month ago I found this YouTube guy, this fitness, super funny, hilarious guy, by the way. I'm like, I was gonna ping you. I'm like, we should try to get him on the podcast. I just love listening to him. He's just so funny. He's more of a comedian. Let me pull it up. It's Ryan. Guys, well, once I said Ryan and funny, I'm sure all the guys are already like, I know who he's talking about. I'll pull it up here while I share this. But but what I did is I changed. I have my, you know, standard workout, and then I incorporated his workouts into it. Right. So instead of doing like incline bench flies, I did his version of incline bench flies instead, or I added his finisher onto my existing like chest day or whatever. I was excited to go to the gym more.
Of course.
I was like, oh, I'm going to try that move that this guy does. And I was like more excited to go. And I got like a better workout, right? Because I confused my body and everything. And I'm like, it's funny how just that principle probably just transcends into all areas.
Well, and also you are being disciplined still, right? So
exactly.
That your creativity doesn't come at the expense of your discipline, or it doesn't have to. But, you know, there is a fine line though. While you're pulling that up, I'll say this, there's a fine line too, especially when it comes to the gym, where a lot of people will bounce from workout to workout, from diet to diet, from this to that, because this is the next shiny object. And that actually can be to your detriment too, because you do need to maintain, you need to train your muscles to build muscle based on the workload they're dealing with. So there's a fine line between
don't go chasing and not getting anything done because you're chasing shiny objects.
Thing to thing. People do it with their jobs. People do it with religion. People do it at work. They do it everywhere. Find the next best thing, and it plays to their detriment. So there is a line to be found there.
Yeah. As Jocko would say, there's the dichotomy, right? To all things.
Of course. Sure.
It's Ryan Hummingston.
Okay. I don't know him, so I'll have to look it up.
Oh my gosh. Seriously, like I almost want to watch his workout videos just so I can get a good laugh.
Okay. I'll look it up.
This guy's super funny. Yeah.
Cool. So, all right, man. What else we got?
All right. Next question. And it's kind of similar, but I just want to confirm, like, this is related to Order of Man, but it's related. So I thought it was a good transition here. So Joe Rowe 92, do you ever find yourself burned out, meaning like you're about to hit a wall with running out of ways to help improve masculinity for others and yourself? If so, do you continue to keep the fire, or how do you continue to keep the fire and the passion alive? And I think you gave the example about adjustments to the podcast and other things. Is there anything else that rejuvenates you in regards to the passion of the Order of Man movement?
I don't get burned out on ways to help. Like there's an infinite number, literally an infinite number of
To
ways to make an
adjust and
impact
pivot
and to
to.
help.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm never worried about, oh, we run out of ways to do this. But sometimes I do frankly get very tired of listening to the same problems and the same excuses and the same justifications. And it weighs on me because sometimes I just want to reach through the screen and shake people's necks and say, what is your problem? Or just go back and listen, listen to the past 6 months of what we've done. And that becomes discouraging. But then I realize, maybe they just found us or maybe they haven't been around that
Yeah.
long. But if I hear from a guy over and over and over again about how shitty his life is and how messed up his relationship is and why he got passed over for the promotion, and he's been bitching about it for 2 years, that's very frustrating for me. And
Yeah.
that's somebody who's just not ready for the help yet. And I have to let that go. I don't want to, I genuinely want guys like that to thrive, but I have to, for the sake of my own sanity and for the sake of this movement, let those individuals go and just say, hey, we'll be here when you're ready, and just keep driving on. So for me, when I get that kind of frustration, I just let go of the things outside of my control. And I can't control how other people respond. And I can't control how other people behave and what they do and what they don't do. All I can do is focus on my own efforts, focus on my own progress, focus on the way that I want to help people, and just let the chips fall where they may. And then we get emails and messages from people like you were sharing earlier, and you realize, oh yeah, this is why we do it.
Yeah.
That guy saved his marriage, and this guy connected with his son, and this guy lost 50 pounds, and this guy just started a business, and he's giving some of that credit to us. That's pretty powerful if you think about that. So it's a matter of what you focus
Totally.
on. Do you focus on the guys that are just stuck in the rut and don't do anything about it, or the men who were at one point stuck in the rut and decided to jerk on the wheel and pop themselves out of that rut and start fixing their lives because they heard something you said in a way they actually needed to hear it? And that's pretty powerful. And then just keep
Yeah.
mixing it up. For me, it's like, okay, well, that didn't work. So what are we going to do? Let's just shake things up. And I actually like that, shaking things up. There's risk that comes with that. People get pissed off when you do it. I'll say things every once in a while, occasionally, that I know is going to ruffle some feathers and rile people up, but I do it on purpose. I'm like, good. Like, let me know you're alive. you know, like, even if you don't agree with me, at least I know you're like kicking still.
Yeah.
Let's have some heart, and so many men are just so sedated. Yeah, the only thing I can imagine is like being in a mental hospital and being strapped, quite literally, with your hands and your legs strapped to the bed. And then when you start to go crazy, the nurses rush in and they give you a shot to sedate you. And that's what most men do, it seems like. It's like, I want to know you're still alive. Oh, good. You're pissed off. Good. Thank you. I know you have a heartbeat now. Like, let's go. Let's get riled up about something here. So
Yeah. One thing that you said I think is profound that we need to remember is sometimes people aren't ready for the message. We get this a little bit. I've gotten this a little bit. I'm sure you get it all the time, in the Iron Council, and some feedback that we get from guys on the podcast of like, oh, what you said was profound or whatever. And sometimes I go, I've said that like 100 times.
of course.
Like, what's new this time? Like, I
Mhm.
probably even regurgitated the same exact sentence, but
Yeah.
now it connected. And I think it's like sometimes I get frustrated with that. Like, didn't you already listen? But then I also see how I do that to my kids, where I might withhold feedback or guidance and direction to my kids because I've already told them.
Right.
I've already communicated that to them before. They know. Well, actually, maybe they
They
don't.
don't. They
And
don't.
it's
They
and
may
it's the
not.
20th time that it's going to connect, not the 1 through 19.
Right.
And I have to remind myself that it's that repetition that also matters a lot.
So when I was managing retail clothing stores, one of my first jobs in retail was working at Journey Shoe Store. And one thing that we would do, and this ties into what we're saying here, is we would have this display wall, and we would put all the shoes, and we put, the skater
The
shoes
nice
here, and the
ones.
Vans
Yeah.
here, and the dress shoes here. And so we'd have them segmented out, right? But on this wall, let's just say there's 50 slots to put shoes. Well, we didn't have 50 designs necessarily in that one style, that one genre of shoes. So what we would do is we would double them up. So we'd put like one shoe up here, and we put the exact same shoe on the bottom right as what was on the top left. And so you would just double it up. And I always thought that was weird. And I remember I either asked my manager or my supervisor, like, why do we double them up? I mean, this shoe's already up here. And he's like, because some people won't see that shoe, but they will see that one. And I'm like, what? That's weird. So I observed, and I would see people. And here's the funny thing I'd see people do. I'd see them pick up a shoe on the top left. They'd pick it up and they would look at it and they're like, oh, okay, interesting. You know, you could tell they were looking at it, see if they like it. And they would put it back, and then they would look around and they'd reach for the exact same shoe on the bottom right. And they would pick it up and they're like, oh, I really like this one. It's the same damn shoe. Why do they like that one? I actually don't know. I don't know why they like that one, but for whatever reason, whether it was the placement or the lighting, or they were comparing it to another shoe that was next to it, there's so many different variables and factors. That was what did it for them. In that shoe, in that position, in that place, at that price point, in that color, did it for them. Although there's probably 3 or 4 other places in the store where that exact same shoe is. And this is what we're talking about. You said it in just the right way, at just the right moment, in just the right context, with the perfect analogy, the way that that individual needed to hear it. And so it's our job as leaders, whether it's this podcast or you as a father, like you mentioned, or an employee-employer relationship, to go meet people where they are so they can learn what needs to be learned. And when they're ready, they'll know exactly where to turn. And that's a very intriguing process to me. And that actually keeps me pretty fired up. How can we continue to reach out to people in a way that's meaningful and significant? From the marketing and the colors to the tone, the inflection, the language that we use. How can we connect with people, men in particular, in a way that they need to hear it so they'll make the positive changes in their life? That's a fun process to me.
Yeah. I like that shoe analogy, because I could even see where you could use that same story to illustrate the importance of who you surround yourself with. You
Oh,
know,
for sure.
I think you could have a guy that's solid, you know, great man, but he's surrounding himself around lesser men. And when you go to meet him the first time, you're not going to think as highly of him, because who's he surrounded by, right? And I could think of this analogy for teenage kids to the kind of people we surround ourselves with and who we work with, and, you know, and everything else. I mean, one thing that we've told our teenage son, this total segue off the original question, my apologies, but what's something we told our son is like, you're with a group of rowdy kids acting inappropriate, you're guilty.
Of course.
You're guilty if you laugh at what they said, even though you're not the one that said it, because you're you're associating yourself, you know, right. Which is interesting, because that's a very passive thing to do. Oh, I giggled a little bit, or I smiled. Well, how passive are we with everything that happens in this world, where we like a button, or we don't say anything, or we giggle a little bit, but we actually don't confront it. And by not confronting, we're passively including ourselves in that behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Great point.
Sidebar comment. All right.
Very valuable.
Paul's
very
pipes.
Nice.
Thank you.
Very nice.
I appreciate that. Where do you see yourself in 5 and 10 years? Do you have any other projects lined up with your boy? I already know this question, but maybe you have projects lined up with your boy for after the canoe.
Nope.
No projects. Focus at hand.
Why? I got a project.
Why even look
right
at
now?
Yeah. I like that.
Why would I start looking ahead at something when I'm not saying that I don't have a vision of at least the way that I show up and some things that I would like generally like to do, but I'm not thinking about another project. I'm still on this project.
Yeah.
If I start thinking about something else, then that diminishes the value of what I'm doing currently. This is a huge problem that we have, is that we either live in the future or we live in the past. You can't do anything about either. Live for today. Now, look, you should have your eyes up, right? When you're driving down the road at night, you have your headlights. And when you're driving, you're not looking right over your hood. You're looking, 30, 40 yards down the road, maybe longer, because you need to anticipate what's coming up so that you can make movements today, right now, currently, that will keep you and the people in your care safe. So yes, you should be looking to the future of what's on the horizon and what could potentially come up and what opportunities could present themselves. Where's the turn on the road that I need to take? I need to start looking for that so I can make the corrections and adjust today. but very few of us start working into the present. And then we miss this wonderful opportunity. You know, I told you my son thinks I'm going to, you know, die here pretty soon, apparently, because I'm coming up on 40 years old. So that should be fodder for me to start thinking about what I should be doing today and how I should be living today. So no, I don't have any projects. You know, look, we've got the truck, we've got the Scout. I know that's something that me and my children would like to work on together. I haven't put a whole lot of thought and effort into that because we're doing this right now. And that's good. That's where we are. As far as where I see myself in 10 years, I don't know. What are you going to have for dinner tonight, Kip? Do you know what you're going to have for dinner tonight?
Nope.
I don't know what I'm going to have for dinner tonight. Cause I just don't know. Like, I don't know. That's
well,
what
that's
is
so
that,
not
6
important
hours away
right now. Yeah.
It's
and it's
6
not
hours
right
away
now.
and I don't know I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years. So here's the point that I'm making. The way that I plan this stuff out is I create a vision of the type of individual that I want to be. What kind of father do I want to be? How do I want to show up for my wife? What kind of leader of this movement or some other business maybe do I want to be? This is how I visualize my future. And then I start working backwards to today in 90-day segments. What can I do right now and over the next 89 days that will help me realize the vision for the kind of individual that I want to be? And what that allows me to do is it allows me to have the North Star of where I'm going and how I behave and how I show up. But it allows me to be flexible on the path. You know, maybe it's order of man, and maybe in 2 years, podcasting is dead and it's something else. And I didn't adjust or wasn't interested. Or maybe something else came up that I was more interested in. And I pivoted because it really wasn't about exactly what I was going to be in 5 years, but the kind of person I was going to be. And I felt like this path was going to serve me better on that vision than what I'm currently on. So I don't plan that far ahead. I plan a 90-day I have that vision. Then I work backwards in a 90 days. What am I going to do over the next 90 days that's going to help me get to this point? And then in 90 days, usually earlier, 60 days, I start reevaluating my next 90 days and so on and so forth.
Yeah. And for you guys that are interested in the details of what Ryan's talking about, you can actually sign up for the Battle Ready program. That is really the instructional process around what Ryan's talking about. That's orderofman.com/battle ready. All right. VM creative Aram. I don't know. This is the good part about these Instagram names because I can't really slaughter words that aren't words. All right.
You can, but nobody would know if you did or not. So
true.
Only that
only that one person. Yeah. How to handle or maneuver political and social opinion differences between yourself and your spouse, particularly around the beast of the year 2020 and what seems to be continuing into 2021. So political and social opinions.
Yeah. Let me back up at first and say this. I've been thinking about this a lot lately because we have a lot of guys who are considering getting married or have just gotten married or have been married for a long time, but marriage is on a lot of men's minds, obviously. I'm finding it increasingly more difficult to justify or rationalize getting involved with somebody who doesn't at some fundamental level agree with you on politics, religion, some of these other issues. I just can't fathom living with and partnering with an individual who I'm not saying we have some political differences. That's different.
Yeah.
But on a fundamental foundational basis, like what it means to be, for an example, an American, or what liberty is, or the history of this country,
or the definition of freedom.
I can't. It just is not, like, marriage is hard enough as it is. I just don't know why you would, in your right mind, and it's not your right mind actually, but why in your right mind you would ever commit to a woman who at the fundamental level does not, for example, if you're Christian and she's an atheist, like how do you see that working? Now, if you're Christian, you're a Baptist and she's a Protestant. Okay, well, all right. Fundamentally, you know, we believe in Christ, right? Like we believe in eternal life and in the afterlife. We believe in that. So, okay, let's work through these little differences. But at a fundamental level, like, just don't, guys. I'm telling you right now, just don't. Oh, but I love her. Yeah, well, there's a lot of other people to love too. So that's not a good reason. All right. We had to knock that out of the way. Did you have something to add before we
Well, I
get
was
into
just
the rest
going
of this
to add,
question?
your point is like, how could a guy do? I think guys do because they don't know. Like, I don't think they have clearly identified where they stand on these issues and what's really important to them. So, they're
I
just
actually don't
chasing
think that.
tail. You don't
I
think
don't
that?
think,
Okay.
I think the second part of what you said is right. They're just
They're
chasing
just chasing
tail.
tail. They're like, I'm
I,
not
be-
going to address that until later.
it's delusion. I agree with that. They're like, oh yeah, well, yeah,
Okay.
we don't agree on how to raise our kids, but I really love her and she's got a nice body and like we have a lot of fun. The sex is good. I think that's probably pretty accurate.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cause I wonder how many guys are clear on where they stand on things.
You don't
You
have to
think
be clear to know some of these
to know you're
things.
not on the same page. I see what you're
You don't
saying.
have to
Okay.
have your whole life's philosophy. I mean, at 20 years old, like how clear could you possibly be? Like,
True.
I got married at 23. I didn't know everything that I know now, and I certainly wasn't as convicted about certain parts of my life and certain parts of politics and society as I am now. How could I be?
Yeah.
So I don't think you need to be super clear to know fundamentally what you believe in and how you want to raise your kids and whether or not you're spiritual and believe in God or what you think about freedom and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. Like, but come on,
Yeah.
right?
All right. So how about, the answer for all the saps that are already married?
Good luck. The answer is you have to find some commonality and some common ground, and you have to strip away the politics, the rules, the regulations, the procedures, the minutia, the details. You have to strip all of that away and get down to the root of what actually matters. So let's say, for example, you have some differences with regards to how you're going to raise your children. Well, let's strip the way we discipline. I'm just throwing out examples, but let's say that you believe in spanking your children and she doesn't believe in that. Okay. All right. Let's strip out the method of discipline and just get down to the root of it. Do you think we need to correct our children when they do wrong? Yes, of course. I would think most rational people would say that. All right. At least we're on the same page. Now, let's come up with some reasonable solutions on how we can do this that will serve first your kids' need in this case, and then our needs. Because in this particular instance, we have to worry about how the children are being served first, and then we can worry about how we're going to do it or what our ego says or whether or not we want to be right or wrong. And I think if you start getting down into the layers, you're going to find some more commonalities than you are going to find differences. For example, you're all going to believe that you want to raise your kids to be self-sufficient human beings. I think most people want that. If it's differences in politics, I think most people, here's a good example. Most people want to help other people who are less fortunate than them, right? I don't care what side of the aisle you sit on. I don't, we generally, I would think, again, generally speaking, think that, the Democratic Party is the more empathetic party, right? That's what we hear, right? And conservatives are just worried about capitalism. But I don't think that's the case. I think that both parties and everybody on both sides of the aisle really want to make sure that the underprivileged are helped and that they're taken care of and that they have opportunities. I think everybody wants that except for a few psychopaths. And they sit on both sides of the aisle, by the way. Yeah. Okay. It's not a difference of whether or not we want those people to be served and helped and lifted up. It's the way we go about doing it. So if we strip all of the procedure away and we get down to the root of the matter, which is we want those individuals to be served, and we work off of that, let's work off of that foundation. And then let's figure out a way that we can do this in order to serve as many people as we possibly can. I think you're going to be better off. And I think if you did that in your relationship, if you're having conflicting interests or arguments or debates or discussions, peel it away. Hey, look, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. But at the root, what is it that we're trying to accomplish? And I think you're going to find you're on the same page a lot more than you're off of it.
Why do you think most people don't do this? What gets them hung up? Just
Well, there's a lot of reasons.
time?
It takes
Or do you
work,
think, yeah,
and we have egos.
yeah,
I want to be right. I am right. Not even
yeah,
I want to be right. I am right. I think that. Like when I
yeah,
share things, I'm 100%. That's right. What I said was accurate. And when somebody says something, nope, that's not accurate. It's the first thing I do is say, well, you're wrong.
yeah,
You're 100% wrong. How could I not be right? That's ego. Like I actually don't know. I've got to evaluate. I've got to take it into consideration. It's not easy for me. It's not easy for anybody to do, but it takes effort and time. We're all lazy. We don't want to do that. And a lot of us don't want to rock the boat, right? You're
yeah,
sitting on the boat. Why rock the boat, especially in your marriage?
yeah,
Like I already said, it's hard enough as it is. And now you're telling me you want to start like rocking the boat and putting extra variables and extra strain on the boat that might eventually capsize us. Nah, I think I'll just sit here quietly and cross my arms and pretend like
yeah.
nothing's going on. And
Mm,
then also I have a desire to be right. I want to be right. So our ego gets in the way.
yeah. I do think there's a level of kind of this expectation that we set on our spouses of the way they should be. And I could see that coming into play where we're like, no, you should be agreeing with me. We should be on the same page. And when we're not, it's like, it's not, oh, we just need to work through it and discuss. It's something's wrong. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be this way. And we just blanketly like say something's wrong with the marriage, and that it shouldn't be this way. And then we don't even dive into anything because I mean, I shouldn't have to, you know?
Yeah. I think this is especially true with men. Look, I'm wearing my patriarch shirt today. So we have this
Yeah.
thing. It's right.
Men rule.
Rule the roost. So we have this thing in our mind of like, it's my way or the highway. I'm the man. I'm the patriarch, and this is the way it's going to go. And so we have this idea in our heads, and then there's some other factors. One is we always want to fix things, right? That's one.
Yeah.
So if somebody else is experiencing, look, if my wife's experiencing a difficult situation with her family or friends or any number of things it could be, she has to literally tell me, hey, I don't want you to fix this for me. I just want you to tell me. And I'm like, well, why would you want to tell me? Like, what's the point of telling me if you don't fix the problem? I don't get it. I don't understand. But you know what I've come to realize? I don't need to get it. I don't need to understand why she needs it to be that way. All I need to do is realize she needs it to be that way for whatever reason. And if me just sitting there and saying, yeah, that sucks, which is hard for me to do. Why that sucks. And that's like the end of my thought. That's really hard for me to do.
I can't provide coaching and guidance and
Yeah.
direction. Yeah. Yeah.
But she does, if that serves her, then okay, And then as the man of the house that I try to be, it's hard for me not to want to put my foot down on some certain items. And there are some things that I will, by the way. And there's other things where I realize, oh, you know what? This is not really the hill I want to die on. This isn't it. And I've learned through maybe just some level of maturity to let some of that stuff go. And if she's content that she, I don't want to say got her way, but that she was valued, that her perspective was heard and acted upon, and it was something that I didn't feel like I needed to die on, then that's a good thing for both of us. Good for her. It's good for me. It's good for the family dynamic. And I'm okay with that. And then, by the way, if I let go of some of that stuff, when I do put my foot down, she's like, oh,
Okay.
he must actually be serious about this, because normally he's okay with working through these things and not letting it be a big deal, but this is a big deal to him. So I wonder why. And then it holds more weight, which is what I want.
Yeah. I like it. Richard Seeley, tips on overcoming social anxiety. Probably a quick answer.
Yeah. Just go where people
Keep
are.
going.
Just jump into the deep end. Like you can tread water, right? Maybe you don't know how to swim. Maybe you're not an Olympic, swimmer, but you can certainly tread water. So just go jump in the deep end, and it's going to be uncomfortable and it's going to be painful. And your whole psyche is going to be saying, get out of here, save yourself. You're in danger. And you're not. You're lying to yourself.
Yeah.
It's not even you. Cause I think when I say you, I'm thinking about the conscious you. It's not you. Your subconscious is telling you you're in danger, and you're not in danger. It's just really, really awkward and uncomfortable. So throw yourself into the deep end, pick up some skills. You could read a book called The Assertiveness Workbook. You can use little frameworks. We've talked about the FROG acronym, which is talking about people's friends, recreation, occupation, and goals. You can use little things like that to remember how to talk to people. And people will say, well, what's a great book I could read on communication? I mean, they're out there, but you should probably just go communicate. That's what you should do.
Practice. Yeah.
Practice it. Yeah. So you can do that one of two ways. You can casually walk into the pool slowly, start at the shallow end and like slowly, and that's a strategy. And then just like when your feet are warm, you get into your shins, and when your shins are warm, then you get to your thighs. Getting past the midsection is always the hardest, right? And then eventually you just fall in once you get past the midsection. Or you could just do a cannonball into the deep end. You pick. I don't know, but just keep moving.
Yeah. All right. David Osbjörnsson. How do you preserve your reputation when you have someone who used to be close to you going around and ruining it?
I mean, look, a shyster like that is going to be able to fool a few people, no doubt. Like somebody who goes around and talks shit about you and tells you tells other people how horrible you are and what you've done. They're going to convince a few people.
Yeah.
But my thought has always been just be such a man of integrity and character that if anybody ever tried to say anything else, nobody would believe them.
Yeah.
And look, Kip, if one day you decided to go out and say, hey, you know what? Like I've been working with Ryan for 3 years and actually he's an asshole and he's not a kind person and he's an idiot and this and that. Like you're going to convince some people, but there's going to be an army of people who are like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Totally.
I mean, I've had personal interaction with Ryan. He's helped me through difficult situations. He's called me in a difficult time. You're crazy.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I can focus on. That's all I can focus on.
Totally. Well, and it's really powerful too, is let's assume in your example that you were an asshole, that in your past, you were a complete dick. And someone confronted you and said, oh, Ryan, I was talking to Kip and he said, you're this way. And you said, you know what? Yeah. You know what?
I was that way.
I've certainly been an asshole in my past, and that's an area of my time that I really regret. Done. It's now over.
Yeah. You just owned it.
Right. Yeah. So if you do have a bad reputation in your past, own it then. If this guy runs his mouth, just say, yeah, you know what? I was a complete dick.
People respect that. I had a guy on the podcast, and I won't say who it is for the sake of names and
oh, come on. Who is it?
It's John. It's John. It was John. John Smith.
What's ruined his reputation? Let's see if he owns
remember
this.
When I had him on, John Smith. He had made some past decisions and choices in his life that he wasn't proud of, and he burned some bridges. And he knew that I had a relationship with somebody that he burned some bridges with, and he just asked me. He said, "Hey, I know you're going to be talking with this person. Would you mind just telling them that I know that I've burned that bridge and I have serious regrets about it. And when the time's right, I'll reach out to that person and do it myself. But would you mind saying that?" And of course I did that.
Yeah. That's cool.
And, and the person I said it to was actually very receptive to it. I didn't know how they'd receive it. And I kind of felt weird being the middleman, but I felt like if this is something I can do for this individual and that helps
so be it.
This person get in a better spot, then I can do that. And the individual that I reached out to was very receptive to it. I don't know if they connected or not. I don't know. That was up for them, but I did my part. And I was actually very not surprised, but it was nice that the individual that I reached out to was like, I'm really glad that you told me that. Like, we've had some difficult times in the past, and I know he's trying to fix some things, and I've seen him doing that. And I just appreciate you letting me know. And that was the extent of it. But that's ownership, right? It'll be good when he reaches out and does that. That's even more ownership, but he's on the path to making amends. And I think most people will appreciate that. I really do.
Totally.
And if they don't, you can't do anything about it. So it's okay.
You can't change someone.
Right.
All right. Tank EDC. how can you speak about masculinity to someone who identifies himself as the opposite sex? So I'm assuming identifies maybe we're talking about,
So they're a woman, but they think they're a man.
yeah. And you're talking about masculinity with them. I mean, I don't know how to answer. Like, I know this question, you haven't even answered this question, but these questions are so hard to answer, right? Because guys, we all like, we don't force people's opinion, right? Like we
Right.
all understand that. And so maybe assuming that we're not trying to impose viewpoints with someone and maybe this is, I don't know. Do you get what I'm
Yes.
saying? Like
Yes, I
it's
do.
such a
So,
tough question
all
sometimes.
right. So here's what I would say. So you have an individual, a woman who, and this is an assumption, but based on your question, is what it sounds like, is that you have a woman, a biological woman who believes that she is a man. Well, she isn't. Period.
Yeah.
Period. Full stop. She is not a man. Now, if a transgender, let me say it this way, if a woman who thought she was a man was talking to me on an individual basis, I would respect that individual. I would respect that individual. Hey, like we could break bread together. We can talk. We can have a discussion. We could do whatever we want. We could go golfing, whatever. Yeah, I'm gonna treat you and respect you as an individual. But I'm not obligated to believe that you're a man just because you think you are. But that isn't a conversation that I'm necessarily going to broach, because why? Why?
Yeah.
It's just not. It's not a question that would just get brought up in natural conversation. Now, if she said, "What do you think about a man who wants to be a woman?" I would say, "Well, you can want to be whatever you want, but that doesn't make you one."
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. We have this weird thing where these words like acceptance and tolerance, right? I can tolerate a woman who thinks she's a man. I can tolerate that. That's your prerogative. That's your right. If you want to walk around as a man and you want to manipulate your body, like you do that. Fine, cool. But I don't have to accept it. Like I don't have to embrace it as accurate or my opinion. I'm not obligated to do that, but I'll tolerate it. Sure. I'm not going to go after you. I'm not going to be hostile towards you verbally or physically. Like do your thing, live your life. But I'm not going to accept it as truth with a capital T. And we can have a pretty good discussion about 1,000 other things. And we could also have a good discussion about this if you ask me. But there's certain conversations I'm just not going to have unless it's a conversation that you want to have. And if a woman who thinks she's a man said, "What do you think about this?" I would say, "I think you're wrong. I think this is not helping you. Yeah. I think this is not accurate. I think when we teach this kind of thing to our children, we do them more harm than good. These are the things I think. You don't have to accept that, and I don't have to accept what you're saying." And that's like the heart of a mature conversation with people who disagree with you.
Yeah, for sure. How would you explain masculinity? And that might be insightful. What's your, what would your definition of masculinity be?
So there's so many things floating around. So let's talk about this. Okay, this is important. So what does it mean to be a man? Right? That's a question that a lot of people have heard me ask, guests in the past, and I've been asked. Well, there's tiers, there's layers, there's levels to it. The first level is you have to be biologically male.
Yeah, that's a prerequisite.
And I've said that a dozen times or more. You cannot be a man unless you are biologically male. Period. Full stop. Now, some people say, "Well, I know some women who are more masculine than men." Right. But you didn't say are more men than men. You said more masculine.
Yeah.
That's different. And this is why I talk about it in levels and tiers. So at its fundamental level, a man is a biological male, technically an adult Homo sapien male. That's what it is. Okay. Now we have masculinity. What is masculinity? Masculinity is a set of characteristics that are defined by our biology, our makeup, our hormones, and our chromosomes. That's masculinity. So generally speaking, you can define it as some of the elements and the features being strength, aggression, control, uh, competitiveness.
Are they the outward representations of that biology?
Correct.
Okay.
That's exactly what it is. And if you look at most of most cultures throughout all of time and history, even in cultures that have not been introduced to each other, if you want to find out more, go look at David Gilmour's work, Manhood in the Making. Most cultures throughout all of time and history have viewed masculinity in a very striking similarity, which means to me that it's not a social construct, it's a biological construct, and it's supported societally. As societies, we support those masculine and feminine roles because it works. Right? Men are bigger, stronger, faster generally, so they're the protectors. It's worked. So society says, yes, that guy's bigger, stronger, and faster, so he's the warrior.
Yeah, he should be a soldier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So we have male. We have talked about male. We've talked about masculinity. Manliness. Let's talk about manliness. What is manliness? That's different than masculinity. Manliness is taking masculinity, those characteristics of strength and aggression and competitiveness and dominance and stoicism, and these that we generally equate to the masculinity, to masculinity, taking that and using it for productive outcomes. That's manliness. So if I take my aggression and I focus it with a set of skills and tools towards adding value to Order of Man and making a living and then providing for my family and myself and other people that we support in charitable organizations, that's manliness. I took the raw characteristics and I applied it effectively, and that is what makes me manly. Now, a man who takes those characteristics and uses them for unproductive activities, like, well, you saw this thing in Africa, 300 school children abducted.
Girls.
That's not manly. Hundreds. That's not manly. That's anything but manly. Okay, they're not using it for productive outcomes, so they're not acting as men do. Not males, men. That's the distinction. That's why I talk about tiers. Biologically male, masculine characteristics, using them in a manly manner, and that's what makes a man. Somebody who's biologically male, who has these set of characteristics and uses them for productive and effective outcomes for themselves and the people they have a responsibility for. And that's why we talk about protect, provide, preside. It's using your skill set and your characteristics and your biological makeup to produce effective outcomes, to serve other people and yourself effectively.
Yeah. And I like that because I think for fathers, how I never thought this was important, Ryan. I never even crossed my mind that there'd be a reason and or value in me defining what a man was and helping my boys understand that.
Right.
Never crossed my mind. And now I'm like, oh my goodness, so critical. So critical. So they know where they should be going. And when they can call themselves a man. And recently I was at an event with our family and these moms are like, oh, our boys are such men. And I was immediately like, no, they're not. Now, are they becoming more manly? Sure. They're growing. That's great. They are not men. They still need you to give them a ride home. They are still takers more than providers. Like they're not there yet. Don't diminish what it is to be a man by saying, oh, my boy's 18 and he's such a man now. No, he's not a man. He actually has to make decisions. He has to take those masculine traits and put them to good use and become sovereign before he can even call himself that. And I like that hardened, like, no, you're not yet.
Right.
Even though it might maybe even sting a young man that might be 20 to say he's not a man yet, because they should be focused on becoming manly.
It's not based on age, because this is why 100 years ago, When you had, well, here's an example. You remember the Lodge cast iron skillet that I got you and some of the other guys in the Iron Council?
Yeah.
So the gentleman that created that, I can't remember his Lodge, but I can't remember his first name. His father died, if I remember correctly, when he was 15 years old. And at 15, he had his mother and he had siblings, and he left and he went to Pennsylvania. He started working in Pennsylvania at age 15, and he would take his paychecks and he would send his paychecks back to mom and siblings. Then he started working his way down America, and he eventually got into South America and did some work there, and eventually started migrating back up north. And he would send checks to his family to take care of them. He was being manly. He was 15.
At 15, yeah.
He would see, so it doesn't have anything to do with age. And long story short, he ended up buying the forge and the cast iron and everything else. That's another story. But he was 15. There, I know 30-year-olds that still live in mommy and daddy's basement. That's not manly. That's childlike. That's a boy. That's an adult male. They got that part checked off. They're an adult male.
Yeah.
But again, that's why I talk about the tiers. And the other thing that we need to address too is there's phrases that we use that support what I'm talking about. One is, you're the man of the house now. When dad leaves, he would say that, right? You're the man of the house.
Yeah.
What does that mean? That means in my absence, you are to be here and you are to protect the family. You are to look after them. You are to be a steward over them to the degree that you can.
Yeah.
That's your responsibility. And as you do that, you are acting in the manly manner, which is why we say you are the man of the house. Same thing with man up. People say, don't man up. It's a horrible phrase. Only if you don't understand the framework I just shared.
Yeah.
Because if you understand the framework, and let's say I had my son and he decided to steal something. He's 13 years old. And he decided to steal something, or to be a sniveling little baby because he had to do something hard. And I said to him, you need to man up. That's exactly right, actually, because men don't steal from other people. That's not manly. There isn't anything manly about that. Okay. If you're being a sniveling little baby in the wake of doing something hard, that's not manly. You need to man up. But also, we've given that conversation context. We've had dozens and dozens and dozens of conversations like this. So when I say, hey, you need to man up, he knows exactly what that means because I've given them context to know what that means.
Yeah, I like that. All right, one more question.
One more.
JFlow 8. What would be the main fundamental points you would cover with a group of teenagers ages 10 through 17 on how to become sovereign men?
Responsibility and how to make themselves more capable of bearing it. That's it. That's all I would focus on.
Yeah.
And
responsibility for themselves.
For themselves, correct. And other people. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Other people as well.
Start with
yourself.
themselves and then start expanding out.
Yeah, a couple of years ago when I would drop my kids off, because we homeschool now, but when I would drop my kids off at school, my two oldest boys in particular, I would say, we would talk about on the way to school, things that I would want them to do and how I want them to behave. And one of the things, they must have been 11 and 8 at the time, 11 and 7, somewhere in there, 10 and 7. I would say, look after yourselves and for those who can't do that for themselves. Because again, that's taking responsibility for yourself. Look after yourself, take care of yourself, protect yourself.
Don't expect someone else to take care of you. Yeah.
Right. And look after and protect those who can't do it for themselves. Because that's part of what it means to be manly. We just talked about that. Yeah. So I would only and exclusively talk about responsibility. I would talk about how to make yourself more capable of bearing responsibility. And I would talk about why it's in their best interest to be responsible. Because sometimes when you think about responsibility, especially as a young man, it's hard to equate that to being something that's either fun or enjoyable or good for you, because you're just taking on the burden. I remember years and years ago when I was in scouting, I took our young men in our neighborhood on I want to say it was a 3 or 4 day, it must have been 3-day hike. And we hiked, if I remember right, it must have been 7 or 8 miles down into this valley. And then we're going to hike the next day, 7 or 8 miles out the next day. And then we're going to stay at the cabin the third night. And we get down to the valley the first night. And they said, hey, what time is bedtime? And I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, well, what time do we have to be in bed? I'm like, I don't know, whenever you want. And they're like, well, all of our other scout leaders give us a curfew. And I said, how old are you? And I'm like, well, I'm 14. I'm like, yeah, you're old enough to make your own decisions about when you need to go to bed. I said, here's what you need to know. We're getting up at 6 o'clock and we're having breakfast and then we're leaving at 7. That's what you need to know. That's all you need to know. And then I'll allow you to make your own decision about when you think you can go to bed. They stayed up all night long. I heard them all night. I'm like, man, these boys are going to be tired. And, you know, they probably went to bed at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever. And I woke them up at 6 and they made breakfast and we left at 7 and they complained the whole way. And we made a motto, and our motto was, well, our official motto was, I will find a way or make one. Our unofficial motto was, do whatever you want and suffer the consequences. and these, man, we had such a great time. They were miserable that second day. And guess what time they went to bed that second night? They went to bed on time that night. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a couple of them told their parents, and one parent in particular called me. I can't believe you didn't get them a curfew. I'm like, I can't believe you have to give your 14-year-old a curfew. Like, that's your fault, not mine. You're the parent. I have them for 2 days, and you think I undid what you did in 2 days, which you did over 14 years? That's your fault.
Yeah.
So, anyways, good times were had by all. A little tired, a little miserable. I don't know how I got on that, but responsibility in young men. Yeah, teach them responsibility and also allow them to suffer the consequences of their
decisions.
Their decisions. Exactly. And when they make poor decisions, they have to feel the weight of it. Because what I could have done is I could have said, oh, well, they went to bed at 4 or 5, so they're probably tired. So maybe we'll wake up at 8 or 9. That'll give them a few more hours. Nope. I told them what time we were going to be waking up. They knew who was going to be making breakfast. They knew what time we were leaving. And that was the standard. It was not misunderstood. They made a poor decision and they suffered for it. And it was good.
Totally.
It was good for them.
I'd like to point this out, though, that you sacrificed to do what was best for the boys. I actually think if you use your example, I think most parents would have liked to get up at 7. So then that way they could drop the hammer a little bit on consequence. But they don't, because you were up all night. Listen to them chatter and you're tired.
Yeah, they put a frog in my sleeping bag.
Exactly. So you're like, I'm gonna sleep in.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna do what's convenient for me because these little shits stayed up all night, and I'll just yell at them in the morning.
Right.
And we're unwilling to sacrifice and do the difficult thing for us to allow them to learn the consequences of their decisions.
That is totally true. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's what I would have done.
I'm not going to say I haven't done that, but every once in a while I get it right. And that was one of the moments I got right. And I paid for it too, because then I had to get up early and I was tired.
I'm sure you're tired. Yeah. For sure. Well, and that's a perfect segue because, and we didn't talk about this, but I'm assuming it's okay that I mention it. Possibly a legacy event this year.
Yeah, I think we're going to do one in the fall. We're going to do a main event, which is our bigger men's event, and then a legacy father-son event as well. So I'll get you guys the details on that. Kip, can I close this one out with just a couple of asks instead of where you normally go?
Yeah, for sure.
Guys, I need 3 things from you. So if you've ever gotten any value from what it is we're doing, just take a couple of minutes and do 3 things. Number 1, leave us a rating and review. Right now, I think we have 5,700 ratings and reviews. I would like to double that. I'd like to get up to 10,000. And I think we could do that fairly quickly. If you guys go in, just take a couple of minutes, particularly on iTunes, wherever you're listening, but iTunes is best, and just leave a very quick rating and review. It goes you would be surprised how much it makes a difference. So go in, leave us your 5-star review. Tell us what you think about the show. If you've gotten any value, do that. Number 1. Number 2, just take a screenshot on your phone. You're listening to this right now. It's likely on your phone. Just screenshot it, post it on Instagram, and tag me at Ryan Mickler and Kip at Kip Sorensen, 2 P's, and it's S-E-N, correct?
E-N. Danish.
S-E-N.
Yep.
So do that. And then make sure you're following me on Instagram. There's some very specific reasons that I'm asking for this. Obviously, it's going to go help promote the visibility of the show, get this information into the hearts and minds of more men, which we need, and women. A lot of women listen as well, and they need to hear this too. but there are some other reasons. And so that I'm just gonna leave it there. So I would ask that you go ahead and take care of that. That would mean a lot to us and the movement. That's all I've got.
Awesome.
All right, brother. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for the questions today. Keep them coming. On Instagram is where we're going to ask that you ask those questions. We'll make a post and you can ask in the comments. And then we'll be back next week. Got a very cool podcast lined up for next week that's going to be released. So I think you guys are going to like it. So make sure you subscribe as well. All right, guys, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.